Warm welcome to everyone joining us from every part of the universe to the 29th edition of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. It is my pleasure to welcome you all. My name is Rhoda Odibo, and I will be serving as the moderator for these pre-summit webinar that is focused on education. And our theme is a very interesting and contemporary one. It is titled Refocusing Education for Workforce Readiness. So welcome to all of you. It will be great to see where you're all dialing in from. So let us know where you're dialing in from. Shortly, you would hear about the agenda. But now I'll begin with introducing the panelists. We have a great line of panelists, thought leaders, institutional leaderships who are here with us to share on this very important theme. And so I'm going to begin with that. You can let us know in the chat where you're dialing in from. That would be really good. So if you can share the screen now. I will begin with our panelists. We have amongst us NERDC, the Executive Secretary of the NERDC. He's ably represented, but I will go through each profile to let you know who is with us and how we'll be engaging today. So our first panelist is Professor Ismail Junaidu, who is the current Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council, NERDC. He obtained his qualifications in linguistics and language from the University of Indiana, USA, a master's degree from the University of York, England, and a bachelor's degree from our very own ABU Zaria, Nigeria. He is a professor of linguistics, an educator, an educational administrator, curriculum developer, and educational policy facilitator and designer. He's a member of many scholarly and professional organizations. These organizations include as a member and member of council of the International Association of Educational Assessments, IAEA, Association of Educational Assessment in Africa, member and immediate past regional chair, West Africa, member of Nigerian Academy of Education, founding member Linguistic Association of Nigeria, and member Curriculum Organization of Nigeria, as well as a member of the Reading Association of Nigeria, very well grounded in curriculum and all that we need to really dive into the topic for today. He is represented by Dr. Chima Ebudro from the Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council as well. So we will be welcome. Let's warm welcome using our emojis. Emojis are a great way to engage in panels, in webinars. So just let us know that you're present with us, that you're engaging, and you understand what we're doing. So let's welcome with the clap emoji, Dr. Chima, who will be representing Professor Junaidu. Our next panelist is Akin Olusoji Akinyele. He is a trained economist, government policy expert, and executive management leader with over 20 years of working experience. He currently oversees operational, technical, and strategic partnerships with governments to build globally competitive public schools and to deliver transformational learning outcomes in basic education to over 1 million children across 6 states in Nigeria. Prior to this, he served as the Director of Africa Policy for a New York-based NGO advocating access to financial products for low-income women all over the world. He has also served as Head of Government Relations at Nigeria's foremost securities exchange worth over $120 billion in market capitalization, where he led advocacy, regulatory interface, government stakeholder management, and business development efforts across the regional offices of the exchange. Now he serves as the Group Managing Director of New Globe Nigeria. Warm welcome to you, Akin Olusoji Akinyele. Let's see the clap emojis coming through. Our next panelist is Dayton Ogo. Dayton is an accomplished executive director with over 2 decades of progressive experience in business analytics, business intelligence, human capital development, which is one of our focus areas today, IT business change projects, and agile project management. Her expertise is in business strategic planning, advocating and partnering with public and private entities, and fostering the growth and success of diverse organizations. She is passionate about maintaining high standards, amazing, establishing efficient operational processes, and leveraging technology to drive productivity and profitability. As a 2-time nominee for the World Economic Forum's Schwab Foundation Social Entrepreneur of the Year Award, she has demonstrated unwavering dedication to addressing societal challenges and creating positive change. She is an Ashoka Fellow, recognized for pioneering innovative solutions and contributing to social advancement. Warm welcome to Dayton Ogo. Let's get the claps going. And of course, our last but not least, if I'm correct, is our very own lady who I'm very passionate about as well. Mrs. Eyitayo Ozavise Salami is an educationist and investment banker with over 23 years of postgraduate experience, cutting across education, accounting, investment banking, sales and marketing, and customer service. Ooh. Edo Subeb. Subeb is the board of education for Edo State. Under the leadership of Dr. Obiawe, launched a revolutionary education reform program called EdoVest, which has become a reference point, I know this firsthand, for basic education sector reform in Africa. Mrs. Salami supported the program before her appointment as Subeb chairman, so she's currently the Subeb chairman. Get the claps and the love emojis going through. Mrs. Salami is the founder and chief executive officer of Stonebridge Learning Resources, an education and learning resource center, managing a network of over 100 teachers, delivering learning on technology-enabled platforms. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from the University of Benin and is an associate member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Cool, catching my breath. Like our panelists come from a diverse background and a wealth of knowledge that is critical for education conversations. So thank you all for joining, and warm welcome again to all of the panelists. My name is Rhoda. I'm currently serving as the head of Africa programs Kizazi. Kizazi is a British charity that supports local charities across the continent, across Asia as well, to deliver what we call breakthrough schools. So if you want to know more about that, I could share later. Or you can reach out to me. Now I'm going to move over to our chair, the chair of the technical subcommittee of the Nigerian Education Summit Group. Mrs. Ozofu is going to give us the welcome address.
Thank you very much. Head of Ministries, departments and agencies, captains of industry, heads of associations, donor communities, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great delight that I welcome you on behalf of the board and management of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group to this pre-summit event titled Refocusing Education for Workforce Readiness, which is hosted by the NESG Education Policy Commission. This is one of the pre-summit events of the 29th Nigerian Economic Summit, which we call NEST 29, jointly organized by the NESG and the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. These events are geared towards engaging stakeholders in a series of virtual conversations and sessions in the weeks leading to the 29th Nigerian Economic Summit, scheduled to hold from October 23rd to 24th, 2023 in Abuja. If you haven't registered, kindly do so at our website, nestgroup.org/29. You can pre-register there now. As we gather today to discuss the state of the Nigerian education sector and the imperatives of repositioning education for workforce readiness, I would like to underscore a few important points. First, Nigeria is a predominantly youth population, and more than half, about 53.4% of our youth population is unemployed. This partly explains the high incidence of poverty in the country, which is estimated at 62.9%, that is 133 million people living in Nigeria in multidimensional poverty. Secondly, the 2018 Graduate Skills Ranking by the World Economic Forum placed Nigeria at 135th out of 140 countries, implying that most Nigerian graduates do not have the requisite skills, experience, and knowledge required to be gainfully employed. Thirdly, according to the projections of the World Economic Forum, an estimated 85 million jobs may be displaced by 2025 due to the shift in the division of labor between humans and machines. However, 97 million more jobs may emerge that are more adapted to the new division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms. You will agree that given the aforementioned points, a reform of the Nigerian educational system to ensure the skills needed to thrive in the workplace are woven into the learning experience across different levels of education has become critical. The education sector is central to Nigeria's human capital development, and there is a need to put the right policies in place to achieve the desired reforms in this sector. Hence, this pre-summit event seeks to identify the necessary reforms and policy solutions to refocus Nigeria's education system for workforce readiness and chart a course for increased private sector investment in the Nigerian education value chain. I want to thank you all for accepting the invitation to be part of this discourse. I want to thank our panelists, and I look forward to the insightful discussions and actions that will emerge from this event. Finally, I urge you again to register for NEST 29 through our NESG website, to join other experts and stakeholders in articulating the pathways to sustainable economic transformation and inclusion in Nigeria. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, TST. I couldn't be more saddened, but also enlightened by the facts on ground. I think that's the reason why we say data does not lie, and data is king. I want to honestly underscore that the NESG has been a pivotal group in bringing the national discourse to the stages where solutions and actions are taken. So I want to congratulate the NESG, especially for always keeping to it. This is the 29th year. There's nothing bigger than this level of consistency. So let's give a big round of applause again, using the emojis, thanking the NESG for the work that they're doing. I also want to underscore, as we go into the panel, some of the data that you heard And this should anchor us in what we are going to be learning about today and sharing with each other. When we say that there is 133 million of us out of 200 going through something called multidimensional poverty. So it's not just that they're not receiving the quality of education, there are health issues, healthcare issues, there are infrastructural issues, there's all kinds of levels of poverty, from learning to health, to food, to all kinds of that. That should make all of us unsettled. When we hear that we may lose or are losing, or we will displace 85 million jobs, that should worry us. When we hear that we are ranked 135 out of 140 of people who do not have the requisite skills to be gainfully employed, then it makes sense that our theme is what we should be discussing: refocusing education for workforce readiness. But it tells us, same data tells us, there is hope that 97 million jobs could emerge, and could emerge by different kinds of innovation. So it's amazing to hear that we are here and kind of like speaking about, we'll be sharing about these opportunities of hope and action. And today will be action-oriented because our panelists, our great panelists, will be doing an amazing job tackling the areas in education that will get us to this place where we refocus our education institutions, our education systems, processes, and practices for a very important part of life and living, which is workforce readiness. So you know all my panelists. What you will do for me is keep engaging, keep asking questions, put them in the chat Q&A, use emojis if something resonates with you, repeat it if they say something that resonates with you. We would like to take as many quotes as possible out of here, because that tells us that you're engaged and you're with us and you're learning with us. So do that, just stay engaged as much as you can. So we're going to begin with, and in no particular order, but we're going to begin from the NERDC. Dr. Chima, please get ready, bringing you up as spotlight. Dr. Chima may not be able to have his videos on, but his voice is enough for us to hear a lot of what he's going to say. So Dr. Chima, just checking my check with you. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here with you.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. So Dr. Chima, you know, one of my, I am a curriculum theorist. That is what I studied. That's what I'm currently trying to complete a doctorate in. So curriculum is my field. I love to talk a lot about it and love to hear what the NERDC is doing. So we're looking at the NERDC. As we know, the NERDC is an institution saddled with that responsibility for our curriculum. Now, correct me if I'm wrong there. One of my favorite theorists is named John Dewey, and he says two things that keep me focused on what I do. And he says that if we teach today's students as we taught them yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. And so my question, and probably what we would all love to hear is the Nigerian curriculum as currently designed preparing our children and youth for workforce readiness? And if not, what are the skills gaps identified by the NERDC? If yes, what is the curriculum doing? We would love to know, to prepare our students for workforce readiness skills.
All right, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm particularly impressed listening to the keynote address by the technical lead. I think, like you said, you are a curriculum theorist, so to say. But you know, there is a difference between theory and practice. We were in the field practicing, putting the theories into practice, and when it comes to, you know, to what we do, you find out that theories don't really translate into practice, but they will give you understanding, they will give you a view of what you need to do. no curriculum would be said to be imperfect because curriculum is usually designed to meet the needs of a particular society. And we also are very much aware of the fact that the curriculum is dynamic, it's a living document, it's never static, it's expected to influence the society as much as the society influences the curriculum. And going by this, I wouldn't want to go into, saying the current curriculum is good or is bad, but I would say that I think we are coming from somewhere and we have progressed, impressively in the past years to where we are today. We might not have been to where we expect to be, but we have made some significant progress in terms of what we do at NRDC, particularly in the design and framing of the curriculum to meet the societal needs. We are focused on meeting the needs of the Nigerian society. We are focused on preparing the learners to be equipped to fit into the society and also make adequate contribution to the development of the society. Now, you will agree with me. I don't know where you schooled, but me, I've always schooled here in Nigeria. But I've also had opportunity to interact with people over there. We will not say we are doing bad, like I said before, but we're not yet there. We're making good progress. We are really impacting on the society through the curriculum. Yeah, but like I said, these things are not, the curriculum is not static. We're also making effort to make sure that we provide opportunity for our children, our learners, the recipients to cope with the dynamic nature of the world. Because every day the society is in the process of evolution. It keeps evolving and bringing new things keep coming up on a daily basis. Before, nobody was hearing of AI. Before, nobody was hearing of robotics, but they are really taking over the work, the job space. And that had created a gap across the globe, not just in Nigeria, across the globe, because nobody envisaged it, and it has happened. So what is it that we are doing on our own end? We're making effort to now see how do we realign the curriculum so that it can fit into the modern realities, so that it can fit into the world we are in, just like the other countries are doing. We're focusing now on skills, on the soft skills of collaboration. We're focusing on the soft skills of creativity. We're focusing on the soft skills of innovation and the imagination, leadership skills, so that we can prepare the learners. These are skills that they're transferable skills, so that irrespective of their areas of expertise or specialization, if they have these skills, they'll be able to, transform no matter what the society comes up with. So our curriculum design has shifted a little, to now focus on building learners with these transferable skills that will enable them, aside acquiring these hard skills, aside acquiring this knowledge, the body of knowledge in the different fields, they will also be able to now apply the knowledge in different contexts. So no matter what the world comes up to be, they'll be able to fit in perfectly in the society. So our focus is that we are trying to create a balance between learning this body of knowledge in the different fields of study and then empowering the learners with specific skills that will enable them transform as the world changes. So that is where we are. So in a nutshell, the curriculum is still okay. It's not bad, but there is gap, just like it is across the world. And we are filling the gap because the gap is in terms of creating opportunity for these learners to acquire these transferable skills, because they were not envisaged at the point that the curriculum was designed. But the world has come to tell us, okay, these are the needs, of the modern world, and we're making an effort to give our children those skills to enable them, fitting into the dynamic society that we've found ourselves.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chima. Just to summarize what you've said, you've talked about the evolving nature of curriculum, the transfer of theories into practice, and how the NERDC is now focused on meeting the needs of the Nigerian society. Hence, a sort of set of skills you term as soft skills, mention collaboration, imagination, creativity, leadership, having identified them as the gaps and the opportunities for any RDC to create, place these skills in the Nigerian curriculum. So I'm kind of summarizing what I think I heard from you. I'll come back to you with a follow-up question, and maybe I can just share that so that you can prepare for that. So since you've identified these gaps, what is specific thing that the NERDC is now doing? Are you calling for a new national curriculum conference? Are you doing a review of the curriculum? You know, what are we supposed to be expecting as the Nigerian public? So I'll keep that question just staying with you while I move over to our next panelist. Mr. Itayo, I'm coming to you. Edo Best is the sweetheart of the nation. Edo Best served as the, I think one of the, correct me if I'm wrong, the first large-scale innovative public partnership programs at that scale, in partnership with New Global, we're also going to be hearing from today. Now Edo has done so much. You serve currently as the chairman of SUBEB, and I see your work, I see what you've been doing. Edo has been going through certain strides. You've been trying to get it right. You've been trying to get it right for children that are ages 3 all the way to junior secondary. And I imagine that there is more even done at the senior secondary level. And I know Edo so far has thought through how can digitalization into this delivery of education, quality education, plays in bridging this gap and helping us refocus education for workforce readiness. Could you share some of the strides that have been made in this sense and tell us a bit of that Edo Best story? And then one more thing maybe you could add to telling us the Edo Best journey, telling us the strides made, particularly in incorporating digital solutions into the state, and maybe share a bit about the role that UBEC, and I know UBEC as a SUBEB works directly with UBEC, what role UBEC would strategically play or potentially plays in improving human capital development at state levels. Over to you, Mrs. Itayo.
Hello, Rhoda. Thank you for such a encouraging introduction. And thank you so much for all. I want to also thank the NESG Education Policy Commission for the honor of sitting on this panel and bringing to bear my perspective as a SUBEB chair, leading a basic education reform in Nigeria. I also would like to just begin the answering of your question by taking on from what the previous panelist said with regards to his comments about the curriculum in Nigeria being one that is evolving. I think that I would say, as somebody that sits in an implementation capacity as far as education is concerned, to say that many a times we have conversations. Even yesterday, I sat on a panel with my commissioner where the conversation was around how the curriculum is not faulty, but it's really about how we implement it. And so I will bring my own experience to bear and hopefully add some light to the conversation. So in specific response to your specific question, I would like to also say that yes, you are right. Edo State is the forerunner, I would like to say, as far as current basic education reforms go. And I would like to, you said that I should share about what strides we've accomplished and the path that we are on, and maybe essentially how it ties into the topic that we are discussing here today. So when His Excellency came on board in 2016, we like to start the Edo Best story by saying that based on what he found on ground, as per the status of education in the state at the time, he sought to answer 4 basic questions. Are the teachers in school? Are the teachers teaching? Are the children in school? And are the children learning? And of course, at that time, the question to most of these was no, the teachers were not in school. And because the teachers were not in school, attendance of children and even the willingness of parents to patronize the public education, this public education space wasn't at a very good level. So His Excellency was in trying to determine how to solve this problem of education generally, and also because at the time, Edo State was very popular for illegal migration of people. So many people were trying to get away from Edo to Europe and to other international countries through illegal means. And that's what we're also popular for. His Excellency kind of connected the dots to say the reason that youths are not choosing to stay back at home is because the education system has failed them. And we haven't prepared them in a way that they are academically ready to take on higher education, or even ready from the area of in the area of skills acquisition to be able also to make a means of living for themselves. In trying to fix this education problem that he found, he decided that he will tackle it from the basic education level. And so in trying to implement this, he identified a technical partner that he could work with and determined that the approach that he will take would be leveraging technology and prioritizing the collection and ultimately the use of data in making decisions around education. And that's how Edo Best was birthed. So with Edo Best, in summary, one of the things we have done is that we standardize the content, right? So we decided to go the route of scripted lessons and digitalize scripted lessons. So we had, and then in determining how the teachers would get this digital content, the governor had to provide tablets for every single teacher in the basic education space. So if you are an Edo State teacher, we brought you to the place where we will train you. So training was something that was identified as lacking as well. So we'll bring you to the place where we'll give you a tablet, give you a device, let you have your content on your device, take you through an intense season of training to bring you up to date in terms of use of a digitalized method of teaching, how to access the device, how to access your content, how to make better use of the content that's provided for you. We'll send you back into the school. We built an elaborate monitoring and evaluation mechanism using actual field officers, because we understand that technology is extremely necessary to deploy this reform at scale. But we also needed foot soldiers that would go into every school using a certain schedule, responsible for a certain number of teachers to act as, not as inspectors, but as mentors, teaching this, ensuring that these teachers were delivering the learning in the right way, because it was not a method that they were used to. And so that's the system that we've been deploying for the past 5 years. So in terms of, everybody knows about Edo Best today. So essentially, that is what we've done. In the course of carrying out the reform, 2 years into the reform, COVID, deploying technology to find a solution to reach our children at home, because they were not unable to come to school. And so in that year of COVID, we launched the Edo Best at Home initiative, which is an online method of teaching and engaging our children when they are not physically in school. And so today, as it stands 5 years on, this is a system that we've also strengthened, and we are still using. We use it during the holiday period. We use it anytime there's a disruption, like the recent increase in fuel that kept us at home for a couple of days in the week. And it's also an area that we are constantly improving on. I would like to say that what the Edo Best system has done in a nutshell is provided a system of accountability for our education system. So with the use of data and with technology, in my office, I have a situation room that can tell me with the click of a button or by choosing any school of our 1,330 schools, I can tell if a teacher is in school or not. I can tell when a teacher arrives in school, departs from school. I can tell what a teacher is doing while in school, because I can check whether she's completing her lessons as she should, right? And whether also, I can also check whether the children are coming to school as they should. I can check my enrollment. To 40 schools, 1,500 volunteer teachers, and impacting just about 30,000 children. Today, EdoBest is in every basic school, which is every primary and junior secondary school in the state, over 1,300 schools. We are currently impacting over 383,000 children, and we have to date trained over 16,500 teachers who proudly declare that they are digital teachers. And with this system of accountability, we've been able to attract. Okay, well, I wanted to say, before I say the system of accountability, what our reform has proven is that the state has not only good political intentions, but good political will to implement and carry through an education reform. And on the back of that, we've been a very suitable bride to international development agencies like the World Bank, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, UNICEF, and all those organizations that are seeking to make or support governments that are making positive strides on their own, with their own money and in terms of implementation. So we've been able to get a lot of support from the World Bank, especially. This support from the World Bank has helped us also access the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So you can see from the point of view of establishing that accountability framework that ensures at least we know that on any given day, teachers are in school. We know that when they are in school, they are actually teaching. We know that the children can be assured that when they show up in school, they will actually learn. We then move on to a season in our reform where we actually must concern ourselves not only with the pupil presence and teacher presence, since we already established that through the system that we set up. We are now focusing on whether the children who are coming to school so regularly are actually learning. And that is how the support from the World Bank and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is helping us. So with access to all this help that they've given us, we can build the expertise to actually carry out certain assessments to actually check where exactly our children are in terms of their learning. And it's amazing what data tells you, because you see how well or how not so well children are doing across different local governments, across gender demographics, and across even rural, urban, and interior demographics as well. So that's been something that we've been able to do. With the ability to carry our own learning out assessments, it then leads us to a place where we are now as a state seeking, in the process of finalizing the setting of standards for learning and setting of proficiency levels for learning. Because our goal as a basic education reform is to say, give us your children for 10 years. You must bring them to school. It's free, it's compulsory in Edo State. We do not take it only to primary. We say, leave your children in school compulsorily till JSS 3. And because we've set standards, because we are assessing their learning and checking their proficiency level, reinforcing the areas where we see gaps, right? And providing intervention as and when necessary, that is statewide, local government-wide, school-wide, pupil-specific. We are saying to you, at the end of the day, we want to be able to offer to Nigeria an EdoBest child that is significantly improved in foundational learning, able to read as he should, also with a curriculum that we are enhancing on the feedback that we get from all the data that we collect. We want to say that when we release a child at the age of 15, the child, even if he chooses not to continue in the academic line, can be a very educated carpenter or a very educated mechanic. So we are saying that this is the contribution that basic education must make to providing a workforce that is globally competitive and workforce ready. So that's what I have to say in regards to your question on what we've been doing in Edo State. Then just to talk very briefly on UBEC and what we've been doing. As you realize, I mean, we are the implementation, we are the people at the state level. SUBEB is the people at the state level that implement all that UBEC seeks to implement for the Nigerian child. And UBEC is very supportive in terms of ensuring that money is available for infrastructure, we know that. But on the part of human capital development, they ensure that teachers are sent on training, specific trainings that based on needs that they have assessed or based on what the states have said, these are what our needs are. And what we find with UBEC is that they are listening to us. The trainings that they have aligned for us very recently seem to be more adaptable or more flexible and more reflective of current trends. And that is definitely very helpful to a reform such as ours, and just to generally to building capacity on the Nigerian front. Thank you very much.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if you didn't, my page is full. If you have just one page of writing from just listening to the chairman of Edo SUBEB, I'm pretty sure that you need a second page to reflect again. Thank you so much. It's a bouquet. It's a bouquet you shared with us. It's a bouquet of intentions, of political will, of willpower, data-driven technology, willful partnerships, just so much that you've shared with us. The Edo Best story is a Nigerian story, and we're proud of hearing all of that. And I can imagine that there are challenges. But what with this particular pre-summit webinar is focused on is actually the solutions and the examples of how we can refocus education for workforce readiness. Thank you so much, Mrs. Eitayo, for sharing that. Thank you for all of that emoji I saw just raining down here on the screen. So I'm going to move over to my next panelist. Hope you're all ready. Next, we have, she says that she called her Dayton. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I will. Dayton Ogo, by the way, she's almost receiving her doctorate degree. I had to say that.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Thanks.
I had to do that. Welcoming Dayton Ogo, who has so much, a wealth of experience, like when we read her profile, wealth of experience, working with people, working in modules that are good examples for us to see opportunities. Again, this is really about solutions. Yeah, really about solutions and examples that have been done of things that we can do and adapt or adopt, as the case may be. So, Dayton, we know that you've done quite a bit of work around internships and externships, and probably people don't really know the difference between the two, so you could shed a bit of light there. And their role, the role that internships and externships actually play in developing workforce readiness skills. I'd love for you to share with us practical examples of working models, probably from here in Nigeria or across the world, from your experience, which is a lot of that, you have a wealth of that has succeeded in preparing children and youth for the world of work. What can we actually adapt? And if it's examples from across the world, what can we contextually adapt or adopt in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you so very much, Rhoda. And I just found Madam Chair's, session, and of course the previous speaker from NERDC's session, so heartwarming, for the very idea that this journey into work readiness and employability started for me as a HR, working in the recruitment field and just on the demand side, trying to figure out or seeing in real terms, some of the outcome of young people or young Nigerians going through the Nigerian education system. And just listening to both of them gave a lot of hope, about the future and what's possible for our nation. And it's very commendable that the NESG is, once again having this conversation. I know that we had a whole conference a couple of years ago discussing with academia and private sector actors on what to do, the solution framework. So there's been a lot of progress, and kudos to the organizers. To answer the question, I would answer with a recent project that I've had the privilege of serving as a program director on, and the design really was to look at three internship programs. Of course, internship is really about trying to determine, for every employer, for every enterprise, they're looking for talent, they're looking for able bodies, they're looking for human resources to help them meet their goals, their aims, and achieve the purpose for which they've established the enterprise, which often is, solution, profits, and just making the world a better place, making society a better place. And one of the criteria, one of the things I found from my recent study is that every HR person is looking for human resource that is considered fit, fit for what it is that the company wants to do, fit for purpose and functional. So there's the issue around if this person even fits. So at the degree level they fit, at an identity level do they fit, where they're coming from, where they're going to, will they make a difference within our firm. So the purpose of internships is to take that demand, so to speak, the fact that that standard exists within every enterprise. Every enterprise is looking for those who can come in and contribute, make a difference, and take the ship of that company forward. Is to go back into the system, the education system, and ensure that that demand is well foregrounded, and it's very clear that academia is aware of the fact that they're going to, the young people that they're training, the people that are going through the educative process are going to exit the ivory tower and go into society, into, and of course, a very competitive society, a very competitive world right now, and will find themselves competing at the level of whatever it is that they've studied, whatever it is that the school has invested in them, and what they know, and how they can also frame their experience and speak to the demand of employers. And what I've found, is that we're still quite a long way. So of course, we've got the National Youth Service Corps, we've got the student industrial placement at the level of, and I'm very happy that Mrs. Salami spoke about it. At the level of design, we have a lot going at the level of design as a country. It's at the level of implementation and coordination that we often drop the ball, and so to speak specifically, over the last, I think it was over the last 2 years, I was invited in by one of the big fours to look at 3 models across the world. So one of them was the Brighter Networks. It's called the Brighter Networks. It's an internship program that is designed for young people, trying to create employment opportunities for young people from low-income homes. Another one was the Sutton Trust, which is also, a UK-based charity looking at bringing young people from disadvantaged backgrounds into well-paid jobs, good, high employment outcomes. And then the other one which is a bit more popular was looking at the 10,000 Black interns, which is also another model, looking at also transitioning those who never, who don't have the opportunity. Because what you found about the theory about employability a lot of times is really about cultural capital, it's about social capital. And sometimes it can be endorsing privilege. It is those who've had the benefit of a good education, a sound education, who have the benefit of good background, good family background, that sometimes seem to transition very easily within the labor market. They're the ones that are, are perceived as ready to work, ready to, have the transferable skills. Life and society somehow has rigged gear for success. But for a context like ours in Africa, where we've talked about poverty, we've talked about limited investment in human capital development, we have larger numbers that are caught within a reality that they didn't ask for. So what is it that we must do? So what that project really was about was designing a non-democratic, non-elitist internship program that will be based and enabled by technology. So it will be based online, and not looking at what it is that made projects like 10,000 Black interns work, collaboration, a lot of, I think it's 700 firms coming together and saying, look, we have a situation in the system, and more than people not choosing to work in silos, taking the power of synergy, taking the power of networking and putting funds together, because we do have a real challenge. We have, for a lot of the programs I've worked on a lot of mediating. I've worked on, if there's any program that's been put together, I've worked on Empower, I've worked on those things that happen on the demand side to try to save those who have been through a system that might not have given them the quality of skills that the system demands. So we put them sometimes in a classroom. And if you find that most of our banks also have these training schools. So you also find that HR people will tell you that they're spending a lot on recruitment, they're spending a lot of retraining. So we can talk about the issues, but at the level of solution framing. So for an externship, for example, some people, I think the series that we have can be, we can actually say it's something that you get academic credit for. It's something that you do during your holidays. It's, it's pretty much like a holiday job. That's what just an educative process that is immersing you in the workplace so that you understand what is happening in the workplace. And you can also decide, you know what, I went in as an accountant, I don't find that it fits who I am, it doesn't fit my identity, and then take a different, make it, it's also creating an enabling environment for people to make their career choices early on, which are some of those things that are still quite broken in our environment. The career, the career counseling, the career, that experience where people are educated beyond the piece of paper that they carry. So what this project was then trying to do was saying, look, we do know that there's this challenge in the Nigerian system. We know that there's NYSC, but young firms are still looking for people. Firms will always be looking for employable people. So what do we do? So let's put them, on this portal, and let's bring private sector actors together. But one of the challenges that we also then had was the HR community often wants something to, they don't want, I'm not going to give you an internship just because you're a graduate. There's so many of you anyway. They're always looking for that extra. There's always the demand for that extra, which is why, as I said, the banks have all these training schools. Everybody, the signal of the Nigerian education credential right now is often limited. People go through young people have to go through very elaborate tiers of recruitment. There's a story to tell around that. You go through tiers and tiers and tiers, critical analysis, interviews, assessment centers. And I've been through personal experiences where I've had to pass almost 96,000 applicants because I wanted to just 15. And sometimes even on the HR community, that's also quite draining because you're spending days and days, you're spending a lot of time recruiting, selecting something, their professional standards, their ways in which, I've sat through panels, and I'm rushing for time. I've sat through panels where we've had arguments where perhaps the head of marketing says, I'm thinking this person can do the job, this person fits, and then the head of marketing says, no, he doesn't fit my brand. This person can do the job. So if we're thinking about work readiness, this person will hit the ground running. But the person who is in marketing also then says, the person who is the recruiter, who's going to pay this stuff, says, well, he doesn't. So there are also those cultural dimensions. There are also those affinity dimensions. There's so many soft things, so many non-cognitive demands that that the labor market often requires from, the educated anywhere in the world. So and what we need to then start doing, in addition to putting those internship programs in a format that is attractive to the young person, using technology, we have skill issues, so we also need to use technology to close some of those gaps. Young people go to NYSC. We have issues around graduate tracking. Those are the many things that we need to implement as a country. But for the lack of time, I'm very aware that in 2021, the ILO put together a Nigerian Youth Employment Action Plan. And all of these things that we're saying and everything that we're discussing about the need for internships, the need for mentoring opportunities, the need to ensure that what is coming out from the supply side meets with what the I don't want to use the word neoliberal, society needs, or what any competitive environment needs. Those things are well documented. I think where we are as a country oftentimes is to ensure that we follow through on implementation, we follow through on monitoring and evaluation, and we calculate impact, and we keep learning, because the people that are implementing, the people who are duty bearers, the people who are reformers, we're all in the learning process. But what we must remember is that it has to be human-centered. Every young person's life in this environment is happening on a daily basis, and that lived experience is very precarious, it's very difficult, it's very challenging. So we have to find those enablers, the counseling centers, those things that those lighthouses that they can go into and get help at the level of a CV, at the level of an internship placement. The people who go for series right now, the student industrial work experience right now, they're not to be sent to go and buy boli and buy coffee and buy rice. It's supposed to be a learning experience, but that is lacking at the level of tracking. That is lacking at the level of coordination. So there's a lot of scope to refine what we're doing or what we've already structured as a country. And there's a lot of scope to then use technology and tie and connect the dots. I was very excited when I heard Mrs. Salami say that we just have to connect the dots as a country. We just have to coordinate and implement these things that we already know. So at the level of internships, I've shared you 3 models that I've talked about to ensure that the people that are caught outside of the web of privilege are also given equal opportunity, are given equal chance, have opportunities. And a lot of and I'm happy that there's a conversation happening at the private sector level. There's a lot of scope to work on work readiness, as collaborators. There's a huge scope, because, one person would throw money at a problem, and then there's just a lot. Perhaps what we did in the health sector when COVID hit, I think there's scope to do that also in the education sector, at the level of reskilling, even those who have exited the university system, and we're creating internship opportunities for them. So that can also give an opportunity to demonstrate what it is that they carry, to demonstrate what it is they can do, and then they can then get these jobs. And of course, it's not about, as the NIEP plan says, not really about, just giving people jobs. We also have to be creating job creators. Once they have basic literacy, they're literate, they're numerate, then they can create a job for themselves and create a job for others. So I've just tried to jumble all of that in there. And I really hope I've answered your question because of time. Rhoda, I hope I did justice to your question.
You did, without a doubt. I mean, again, my paper is full. I don't even know how to begin to summarize, but thank you so much. So much. There's so much you shared. And I think, 2 things that resonate so strongly. I think everything resonates, but what I will pick on now is towards the end when you said we need to target people caught outside of the web of privilege. I think that's really powerful, because it directly talks to or speaks to what we heard at the welcome address. When we say that we have 133 million of us going through multidimensional poverty, these are the group of people caught outside of the web of privilege. They're also the people we need to be providing support to. You said so much. You almost ended as a good way to help me segue into the next panelist, when you talked about this foundational basic literacy that is needed. But there was so much you shared, the 3 examples, the 3 models. I hope you all wrote them. Go and check them out. Go and research. Follow her. Follow Dayton to know. Ask her the questions. See what you can do. I love how you stress that NYSC, IT is not enough. There's much that we need to do there. You so much, you talked about some of the examples, the use of technology, how we can do graduate tracking. We need to be able to calculate the impact. Then you said we should be anchored on human-centeredness, those enablers that will help us to, take all of that. And you also pointed out something I have to go and read, the ILO, the International Labour Organization Youth and Employment Action Plan. You talked a lot about that. I don't know. Non-democratic, non-elitist program based on technology. Look, my paper is full, so thank you so much. And just as you did help me to go into the next panelist, I know he's done a lot of work. He's working across governments, internationally and nationally. I'm welcoming Dr. Soji into the space right now. Dr. Akin Olusoji, the Group Managing Director of New Globe. Dr. Akin Olusoji, you have done a lot of work with governments. It is you, if anyone knows how to work in partnership with governments, that we need to come to you. Now, Dayton has set the scene. She set the stage. She's talked about the gaps. She's really held on to quite a number of things. She's actually even helped us to understand that these gaps are multi-level. There are multi-level gaps. But I need you to tell us a bit about New Globe and the work that you're currently doing as a leadership there. And we know that New Globe has been partnering with governments across Asia and Africa to deliver transformation programs in education for many years. Tell us what New Globe specific programs are tailored at. What are the specific programs that are tailored at improving these diverse skill areas needed for workforce readiness? Just as much as Dayton has said that tone. And as you tackle that and tell us that New Globe strategy, what should the private sector observe and prioritize that are, you can say, are considered unseen opportunities of investments in education? Maybe there's something the private sector is not doing, because they don't even mention this quite a bit. You know, that public-private partnerships. You kept going back to it. There needs to be a partnership. There needs to be a partnership. So what is the private sector? Does private sector need to observe it as well as prioritize? Are there unseen opportunities of investments in education that should lead to these outcomes that we're looking for, which is the theme of this, our pre-summit webinar, Refocusing Education for Workforce Readiness. So tell us the New Globe work. Tell us, what you've been doing, specific programs that are targeted at these, and tell us what you think that private sector should be doing.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Rhoda. It's a pleasure to be here, to be invited to speak with such eminent panelists. Fun fact, I used to be on that side of the divide. I think about 6 or 7 years ago, worked at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group as well. Interestingly, I was also part of the technical committee on the Summit on Education. So, a few years after that, here I am speaking again, about education from the position of success stories, and if you like, models or examples of government partnerships that work. And just to say that is why the mission of New Globe is so critical, in the sense that we are established really to reach the lives, millions of children, providing life-changing education opportunities to the underserved, which is what Mrs. Dayton Ogo called targeting those that are outside the web of privilege. So that's really the focus, because when you think about developing or underdeveloped economies, majority of the children there are truly outside that web of privilege. And we found out that in order to do that, the best way is to form partnerships that ensure an implementation of time-tested education reforms or education interventions at speed and at scale, because we're talking about today, New Globe, through our partnerships with, of course, in the government of Nigeria, we have subnational partnerships with Edo, Mrs. Salami is here, Edo Best. We have with Lagos, Eco Excel. We have with Kwara, Kwara Learn. We have with Bayelsa, Bayelsa Prime. The combination of those 4 programs that we support attends to about 1 million children. And then we have about 2 million other children in the national governments. For instance, we support the national education program in Rwanda, Rwanda Equip, in Liberia, in Manipur, India, and we have our community schools, both in Nigeria and also in Kenya. So because of this, we are able to see really what combination of ingredients actually makes for delivering transformational learning outcomes for children. And we are focused on that foundational level, that foundational learning, largely because, as Mrs. Ogo said, if they are literate and they are numerate, right, then they can begin to have the opportunities that those that are within the web of privilege all have. And just tying it back all the way to the first speaker, the representative of the NARDC, that when you think about actually it was, the chair of the technical committee, talking about the multidimensional levels of poverty. One of the levels of poverty, therefore, that we, are critical about is that learning poverty. When you think about, the fact that about 90% of children in sub-Saharan Africa, majority of them in Nigeria, are not able to read a simple sentence by their 10th birthday. That's the kind of poverty, learning poverty, that we're dealing with. So the solution that we bring is applied to a partnership where, you partner with a visionary government, in this case, a visionary government like that of Edo, like that of Lagos, like that of Kwara, Bayelsa, and of course others as we continue to speak with them, to show them that there are actually modern day education, basic education interventions and reforms that can deliver results at speed and at scale with evidence to show it. Mrs. Salami, Chairman Salami has explained to us a lot about how the Edo-based model works, about the digitized learning instructional guides that goes to every teacher, in Edo-based schools, and how through, coaching, mentoring, and, training, right, these teachers are able to now deliver lessons and content, not just at the grade of the child, but actually at the level at which that child should be learning. We find out that many children at their grades are not actually learning at the right level. So the New Globe methodology is really to ensure that there are supplemental learning experiences that ensure that numeracy and literacy are shored up to the point where by the time these children are coming out of school, you then are able to be at par with, with children that we have said are within, if you like, the web of privilege. Case in point, the primary schools in Lagos State, Eko Excel, where about 3 of the children in the last 2022 and 2023 common entrance were among the top 5, performers in the national common entrance. You may not have, had those kind of experiences before, or where, in Edo State, and particularly in our programs, we find parents withdrawing their children from private schools and taking them back into the public school, right? Because of the intervention and the new methods of teaching, if you like, modern day classroom management, teacher coaching, student motivation, and then an entire feedback mechanism that is built on data, such that we understand, as Mrs. Salami was explaining, the lesson completions, teacher arrivals, teaching attendance, enrollment drive, and the growth and the trend in enrollment. So this is really at the core of what we supply. So taking it again to Mrs. Ogbo's point, that while hers may be from the demand side, ours is from the supply side, understanding that the bedrock of workplace readiness, especially when you think of Nigeria, 200 million strong population set to double by 2050, will be contributing a significant amount, right, to the global workforce. The bedrock of making sure that we are workplace ready is actually foundational learning and making sure that literacy and numeracy skills, right, come up at the right level. And so the solution really is how fast we can do it and how wide we can achieve it, which is why we go at speed and at scale, partnering with governments. And that's why recently we signed an MOU with the Nigerian Governors Forum as a way of showcasing first these 4 models that are working in Nigeria by Nigerians, right, and showcasing that to the rest of, if you like, the 32 or 33 states to go, and saying that, as you understand, this soft competition that happens across the states and a peer review mechanism, motivating other states to actually adopt these educational interventions and ensuring that the critical financing that is required, for education reform is then made available. We're talking about repurposing internally generated revenue and budget allocations to education in an efficient way, where you actually are targeting the issues that are hindering learning development in your children, which is really, teacher motivation, teacher absenteeism, instructional content and the right level of it, learning materials, right? And of course, an infrastructure, a database, that shows, how you can actually implement these reforms based on data that is collected from the ground up. So you have a monitoring and evaluation mechanism that also gives you feedback at the end of every academic term or every academic session. So we're looking forward, to partnering with a lot more state governments in deploying this kind of time-tested, and actually even proven over studies by Nobel laureate, Professor Michael Kramer, that this is actually an intervention that is able to supply the right learning outcomes at speed and at scale. So to your question, your second question, as to what are the opportunities for private sector, as someone that has worked on both sides of the divide, in one lifetime, I was also on the Ease of Doing Business project in the Office of the Vice President in the immediate past administration. And what we find out is that many times, while the public sector is pushing out reforms and attempting to, implement certain reforms, the private sector takes up a wait-and-see approach, right? And we are saying that it is important that there is engagement both between public sector and private sector, and that is why, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, it doesn't get better than this in terms of a platform for public and private sector engagement and discussion. So it will be interesting to see a lot more private sector advocacy towards, modern day education reforms that are in the pattern, of what is being deployed across Edo, Kwara, Lagos, Bayelsa, and as many other states as are adopting this. It will also be important to see, the equivalent of CSR activities or ESG activities, that are now targeting, the bedrock and the foundational learning that we know will deliver those learning outcomes to ensure that these pupils, children now, by the time they get to working age, are actually equipped for the workplace, right? We're talking about also integrating, vocational learning into this, integrating, skills around, all the things that we find now, in the industrial revolutions in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of that, just exposing this. And it takes a private sector that is advocating for this, largely because the children that are learning now are the labor supply, the labor force of the future coming into that same private sector in order to, boost productivity for the country. So, and that immediately tells you that, that's the correlation, or if you like, the causality between education and educational reforms, educational development, improving learning outcomes, and ultimately the GDP, either in terms of value or growth, for an economy. And that's where the New Globe as an institution, right, sits in that intersection, ensuring that the three main ingredients of any implementation or any program reform, right, is put together. So the political will, you see that in what Chairman Salami is talking about, the political will right from the governor and the reason for implementing that reform, the critical financing that is required to do that, both by redirecting internal resources for efficiency in that reform, but also because of that, attracting global multilateral funding, concessionary funding that can also support in doing that. And of course, leveraging technical expertise such as New Globe, right, in driving, and supporting those implementations up to a point where, the transition and the sustainability of the program is secured. And that's really what we do. And we're just so proud to be partnered and with the current governments that we work with, and as many others as will come on board.
Ooh, okay. Another amazing session. Let me see your emojis coming through. Thank you so much, Dr. Soji. So much was said, and I like the way you rounded up and talking about the positioning and what New Globe is trying to do with governments in that support capacity. And I like this, like, what I call it, like the broth, where you talk about, you relate what Mrs. Salami mentioned, the political will, plus the critical financing, plus leveraging technical expertise, and New Globe playing in that intersection in helping to drive that refocusing agenda. Thank you. I did pick quite, and I know I've been in many platforms when, particularly in development spaces, where the conversation is always about innovative financing. How can people begin to use their own money to solve their own problems? That is the most, sustainable way. Of course, you get support. Of course, you do all of that. But like you say, you mentioned repurposing IGRs in an efficient way to address these issues, and you focus on stressing out that still the journey towards workforce readiness is having strong foundational learning in the areas of literacy and numeracy, and that is what New Globe has been doing in this currently 4 state partnerships, and another part is, I think, institutional partnership of the NGF, Nigerian Governors Forum. Thank you so much. The Q&A section is full. So I would have loved to go back to every one of you, but I think I'll come back to all of you maybe with rounding thoughts. But I do think that let's take a look at the Q&A section. Too many questions, and so many of them are directed at Mrs. Eitayo and currently Ms. Ditong. Mr. Eitayo, there's so many questions here for you. Someone is saying Edo State, Edo State, Edo State, Edo State. I don't know if you have seen those questions, Mr. Eitayo. So Edo State, one is asking about infrastructure deficits. Is the technology always ready and available? And what is Edo State doing with all the partnerships, and how have they been accountable to the investments that have been coming through? So, Mr. Taylor, I think I'll summarize with these 3. What's going on with the investments? How you are building the accountability? What about the technology? Is it sustainable? Is it going on well? What about infrastructural deficits? Can you speak to that? Because I think even though these are not always 100% directed to what the agenda we have today, which is the kind of refocusing attention on building these skills, but I think the question around infrastructural deficits and how they may affect access, which you talk about, I mean, those 4 big things you said the governor was worried about in the beginning, are teachers in the school, at teachers, at students learning, those kinds of questions. So there's a question all here really around those for you. So if you could spend 2 minutes, I'm going to watch on the clock to try to address these questions, and you probably have seen them. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Rhoda. I'll try and keep to your two minutes. So with regards to the availability of technology for other education managers other than myself and His Excellency, I would like to say that yes, education managers at the local government level do have access to this data at whether they are the LGA, whether they're in the LGA office, the field officers themselves, and the people that we call regional managers and head of sections, they all have access to this data. Then with regard to the infrastructure, I will speak to what exactly we've been doing. When I spoke about how the state of education that we inherited, I was speaking specifically to things around learning and teaching, but also we inherited quite a level of dilapidation. So the dilapidation that is being referred to in the question is nothing new all across Nigeria. And what we've done, at least in the time that His Excellency has been on board, currently we are intervening in, okay, this is not even since he's been on board, but just currently over the last 1 year, we are intervening in 386 schools, releasing numbers as many as 400 classrooms, renovating 400 classrooms, building 400 classrooms, putting water in quite a number of schools, distributing furniture, impacting at least 72,000 children in this phase, and in over 380 schools. So, and that's what I can say to that. What we also realized, also on the back of technology, was to say, as SUBEB, we manage a big portfolio of infrastructure as well, like any infrastructure company you would think about. So we also established a database using technology to identify exactly the state of our infrastructure and to come up with what His Excellency has called a 5-year infrastructure plan. Because when things are dilapidated, you can only fix them bit by bit. Also, what you realize Edo State has done in disarticulating. Disarticulation means that we as a state have decided that for us, basic education does not end in primary 6. We've added on 3 more classes that other states have not added, so that we can give better value to the Edo child. What that means is that we added on 330 schools that we didn't have previously to the infrastructure portfolio that we'll have to fix. So when people in the question talk about leaking roofs and things like that, they are talking to secondary schools that for the past 20 years had no form of intervention at all. Most intervention at many state levels have only been in primary. And this is something that we are attempting to fix. As we go into the next phase of infrastructure, renovations and interventions, we are going to take on the next number of schools. But we use data to determine what schools we should be intervening in, not just political interest, for example. So we know where the huge number of secondary school children are. We know, for example, that we will be expanding many of our primary schools to co-inhabit with the first 3 years of JSS, that is disarticulation. So we are moving from a place where we are just simply primary schools on our own and senior and junior secondary school cohabiting to basic schools where we have the first 9 years of education sitting in one space, because we have more primary schools anyway. And we use the information and data we have to think the best way to currently disarticulate physically the junior and the senior secondary school. So this is things you will see unfolding, and we definitely ask every Edo person to be patient in this regard. What was everything? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, asking for Edo people to be patient with you and all the work that you're doing. It's been many years, and I know this question, and maybe there's some, I think the quest is for a certain level of transparency to understand what has been happening and in the states, etc. And so that's where the question, and one question was actually around, and I probably didn't mention that, but I think you answered that question, was probably around, how does the tablets help to, of course, track attendance? And I think Mrs. Salami had mentioned that during her time that she has something called a situation room, and in that situation room, they're able to track attendance, and they know what time a teacher gets in the school, etc. So there's a lot of data that comes through in that particular technology that is used to support and monitor the schools that the state is running. I also, there are a lot of questions, so I'm trying to put them, because in the interest of time, I'm trying to, in my capacity, I'm trying to see if I can put them together in one. There's a lot of questions here. I want to a bit focus on some of the questions that I think this is Mrs. Sarah Sosan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a question to Dayton. She says, thank you for always being an asset. And her question to you is, have you ever forwarded your thoughts to corporate bodies to give more opportunities for internships for skills development? And additionally, have you reached out to state governments too to exploit such strategies and all the strategies that you have explained to us?
Thank you, Madam Rhoda. I'm assuming that that is Excellency, Mrs. Sarah Sosan. The answer to the questions are yes, and I must say that what I didn't, because for the merit of time, we came out of my first sojourn from being a HR manager into the social space was really to put together a 4-week training program, a remedial program, so that young people, at least when they came out from university, were transitioning into the world of work, were able to speak the language of employers. So we did come out from the reform process that Madam Ezekwesili did, a champion at the Ministry of Education those many years ago. We came out as a career center, a national career center, one of 6 at the time, and it still runs as the after-school graduate development center. You know our board chair as Mrs. Bukaoshika. It's still being run, it's still ongoing. So that's a private sector intervention that is still running. And then we had, so the other experience I spoke about was actually championed by Mr. Aigi Mokwede of Access Bank, alongside about 7 of his friends, just working with the PwC to also try to take this internship. So looking at his own experience as a young person and how, I remember he recounts the story very passionately about his first surgeon into banking was because somebody mentored it and somebody gave him an internship opportunity. So the purpose of the Enterprise NGR program actually is to try to create that for a lot more Nigerians using the power of technology and those 3 models that I mentioned. At the national scale, I think we've been part of many, many conversations just to try to see what can also happen at the level of the NYC so that young people also deploy, that 3 weeks to prepare themselves, not just for a job, just prepare themselves for life. I remember once my daughter joined me in one of those sessions, and that was the first time that I also saw the intergenerational divide between, we're a different generation. And she said to me, all of these things, she happens to be a psychologist, all of these things that you're saying employers are demanding from us, are you not thinking about our mental health? And then I said to her, funny enough, there are countries like, I believe, OECD countries now have included drive into their curriculum, drive and resilience, because they found that the pressures in the world were getting, and there's no guarantee that the pressures in the world will reduce. So they then had to go into, and I like that we talked about, the curriculum. So how we also rigging the curriculum to speak to the demands of life as people are living it now. So to answer your question, we've put a lot together in documents. I think a presentation was made to the NGF at a point. We've worked at state level with Lagos State on the Ignite project many years ago. What we're seeing and what we keep taking away from those experiences is that there's still scope to do more. We're a populous nation. There are many people. There's nothing wrong with privilege. That is life. Life is the way it is. Life is the way it is. What we're saying that as a society that wants to structure as one that's equitable and giving chances to as many as possible, how do we even use how do we ensure that those who have been blessed with privilege also pay their experiences forward? I believe my theory really coming out from, so I've done a lot in academia over the last 5 years because I wanted to get and immerse myself within the university system, because I, as a HR manager, I was blaming the system. I was blaming the education system. When a young person sat across me and they didn't even know the first demand of an employer, I was like, what is going on in the education system? But more and more I've seen that it is quite, I've been in the university for like 5 years, studying the Enterprise Development Center, studying the series program, and half the time you ask the students themselves, there's an information problem as well. So we've worked with even private firms like MTN at a point to run a scholarship scheme to try to situate career centers within universities within Nigeria. So we do also have other realities in Nigeria, sometimes that are transactional, that are not, and I'm happy that Edo talked about political will. So with more political will and with more focus on how life is affecting and impacting an average Nigerian, more can be done for more Nigerian citizens. And it just takes coordination and implementing and following through on these many strategies and these many documentations that we've put together, which I'm very confident that the NSG as a hub and as a private sector, brain and engine room is constantly championing. We've had from the Human Capital Commission for many years and discussed some of these things. And I think that what is now necessary is to continue to implement those things and then maybe track those things. I've been part of a conversation with the World Bank recently on a graduate tracking. So we also even use data to talk about, bearing in mind that with the funnel syndrome, it's not even the most numbers that are going to university. And we live in an environment where there's a huge premium placed on university education. Does everybody have to go to university? What are the alternate tracks? And how do we make those also attractive? And how do we place a premium? How do we tell the stories of those who didn't go to university and are living a successful life, are living a sustainable life, are able to feed their children, feed their family, and make a living? Because that's really what education, expand your life, hone your identity, live life, make a difference, and and live a purposeful life. Education is, I worry sometimes we're doing a one-size-fits-all. Government must solve all the problems. As a parent, I think that one thing to take away as a parent, when a child asks you a question, I say I never give them the answer. The first answer I give my own kids, for my kids, is what do you think? Because thinking and ideating is really the currency of the world that they live in now. So empowering them with thinking, empowering them with building solution providers at the level of the home, because children don't even go, they're in school for, but they're with parents, parents most of the time. So even you will find that even the mother that's not educated wants her child to be educated. So those ways that we also advocate for those are the, different tiers of our society to constantly encourage that human capital development, to encourage training. And it's something that is everybody's responsibility. I've come to see that employability, work readiness is everyone's responsibility. And we just all have to get on board. I hope that answers the question. And Ma, I hope I answered your question.
Amazing. I hope you are, Mrs. Sohan, I think she was a former Commissioner of Education, Deputy Governor of Lagos State. I hope I have the correct person here. So thank you. Thank you. Just before we go to the next question, there's a comment. I think it's important to read some thoughts from Funlola just came in. She says, I hope it's female because I'm saying she. It is good to fix the structures and infrastructure. However, in today's world, there is a need to also focus on content, extracurricular, and stratifying children as students. This will help in bringing out talent and the supply of students who are not academically inclined. All states and stakeholders need to collaborate on this. Thank you, Funlola, for that thought. NESG, Team NESG, there's a question for you. So I'm going to hold you just who is going to respond to that question is asking about the role of the NESG or the role that the NESG is playing, if any, in executing the National Student Loan Bill. But hold on, we have two questions. I've kind of put it together, summarized for Soji. For New Globe, I think the first one I would want to put together, it says New Globe works with governments. Let me take it off from the screen so that I read exactly what that question was. Give me a second. I'm just trying to scroll through. Okay, anyway. The first question says, is there enthusiasm? I think it's still from Mrs. Sosan. Is there enthusiasm from governors to collaborate with New Globe, especially as political will is essential to doing this work? And the other question is, can New Globe work with governments to drive an adoption of an education trust fund that would enable cheap access to education financing for those who can't reach it? So those are two questions for you, Doctor.
Thank you. Very, very good questions, Your Excellency, if we're talking to the right person. The short answer to the first question is yes, they're actually very enthusiastic as to, especially when we show them the success models of Edo, Kwara, Lagos, and Bayelsa. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was at the Basic Education Summit Boot Camp in Uyo for all commissioners of education and state chairs of SUBEB. And, just showcasing the fact that there is actually education reform, education progress in states in Nigeria that they can actually, so it's not, you're not looking too far away. You can actually see your sister or your brother states, depending on how you look at it, performing, better in terms of learning outcomes, in terms of, academic performance of the children in that state, already drives enthusiasm. Then, when you think of it from the point of the fact that with the benefit of the recent elections, we have about 18 new state governors, which means, 18 new, if you like, agendas that want to impress or, or that want to, keep their political promises. That already also drives interest, right? And then, that explains the MOU with the NGF, where as educational resource partners to them, we are able to present these models and, assist them, guide them through peer review mechanisms and other instruments to actually begin to see which states are, are ready for adoption, which states, need to put in certain things in place, before they go into an adoption of the kind of model that Edo, Kwara, Lagos, and Bayelsa are enjoying. The second question is a very good question as well, where you talk about the Education Trust Fund. And that ties to the point where I talked about, critical financing and, using your own internal resources first to be able to generate, to essentially put your skin in the game, equity in the education reform. The Education Trust Fund is a useful vehicle to achieve that. But Your Excellency, you will agree with me that an Education Trust Fund is only as strong as the value of money in that fund. And that's really where it is. So if there is, and particularly in states that have, very strong private sector representation, in the sense that in every state in Nigeria, there's probably 1 or 2 big tier companies, blue chip companies, and a few, medium scale companies and several small scale companies, that can be incentivized to actually fund an education trust fund. Think of tax credits, think of, policy waivers and things like that, that actually incentivize the private sector to fund an education trust fund that is, transparent and accountable to them, that in turn then funds, an intervention such as that which you see in Edo-based, in Kwara-Len, Bayelsa Prime, and Co-Excel, supported by an organization like New Globe. So yes, it's a very, innovative financing model, and we're happy to discuss this more with you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much. Someone is saying to you, I really appreciate the effort of you people. I appreciate the effort of Dr. Olusoji on improving the education sector in Nigeria. NESG, is anyone ready for your own question? What's the role? What is the role that the NESG, or what role is NESG playing in executing the National Student Loan Bill? Not sure how it attracts out to and is focused on our theme, but if you could just pull that together, I think that would be helpful. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Rhoda. Interesting question from the person that asked. So I'll just be brief. Primarily, the NESG does not execute government legislation or policies. So the role that we play, we are a think tank, and primarily we are focused in evidence-based advocacy. So we look at our website, you learn more about what we do and how we do it, as well as how we engage with the government. We are not primarily executors of government policies.
Thank you. That was quite straightforward. Thank you. Advocacy, and more advocacy is what the NESG has been doing for 29 years. Next year will be 30 years. And we can see so much that is coming out of it. I'm coming to Dr. Chima. Dr. Chima, I didn't leave you alone. I hope Dr. Chima is still on the call. Dr. Chima, I didn't quite see any question here from our listeners, our participants. But Dr. Chima, are you here? I'm not sure if I can see.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Dr. Chima, I had one question for you, and I was going to come back to you. And that question was still about what the NERDC, what action steps, you talked about the skills gap. You talked about what the soft skill areas. You said the curriculum is evolving, and it continues as it is around the world. And so I think my question then was, so just a follow-up question to what you shared with us, if you could just share again what the specific actions are, towards, these changes or this evolving of the Nigerian curriculum that the NERDC is currently engaged in.
Yeah, I think we've begun some work seriously, and we're starting from the senior secondary education level. I began the process of reviewing the curriculum to make it a bit more, need-driven, and we're looking at a competency-based curriculum that is Afrocentric and focusing on value reorientation, looking at entrepreneurship, looking at the 21st century skills, and then focusing on the blue and green economy, and also looking at the creative arts as well as digital literacy. And it is an all-encompassing framework that we have developed. It's just been validated like 3 weeks ago by critical stakeholders across the country. And our projection is that by next year, Nigeria will be having a very brand new curriculum that is competency-based, and I will build the skills of learners, to be a bit more productive. We're looking at making sure that, even if a child is not able to continue education at the tertiary level, he or she will be a job creator. So we are introducing the in full glare the competencies related to entrepreneurship. We're looking at building all the skills around the local needs in terms of the industrial sector, considering the areas of air conditioning and refrigeration, considering the areas of beauty and the makeup industry and the entertainment industry as well. So we're looking at a very holistic curriculum framework that will give Nigerian youth opportunity to acquire skills and make them to fit in into the global economy and perform, effectively without really looking to get further education if they don't want to. So that is what we're looking at NRDC. And once we are done with the senior secondary, we'll now move down to the basic education level because the senior secondary curriculum has overstayed. It's above 12 years. So we're starting from there to give Nigerians what they need. And it will be something that will interest you to know that in a few weeks, we'll be having a national stakeholder engagement, which will be chaired by the Honorable Minister of Education, to look at the new framework for the curriculum to now give it a final ratification for us to start the curriculum review proper. So that is where we are. And I think it's something that is interesting to note, and we look forward to giving Nigerians the best, in terms of the senior secondary education curriculum.
Dr. Chima, thank you for being very specific. I think we know the number of outputs that are going to come out from what the NERDC is looking at. And I think you're starting from senior secondary, particularly because this is the group that goes into that, becomes workforce ready in the next 2 to 3 years, depending on the level that they are. And then cascading back down to basic education, which Dr. Olusoji had stressed, as the foundation for really creating opportunity, that workforce readiness, because over time the kids have the foundational learning skills that they require. And so we're looking forward to all of that journey and seeing that within the time, and I'm hoping that, as you mentioned, all the various industries, entertainment and all of them, that we're also thinking through, as you say, a holistic curriculum framework that is that tech-driven, is thinking about machine learning, thinking about AI, and all the things that matter to children today, that opens up, that helps also have a curriculum that meets industry. Thank you so much for that. I have just one last, I don't really have more questions. Oh, wait, I do have one from, and maybe anyone could tackle this. Thankfully, I remember, I didn't forget this. This is from, who should read? Okay, I think I should come to Mr. Itai, or likely you'll be the person to answer this question from Adamu Ibrahim. And then following this question, I think what we can do is go around all the panelists, give your final statements, and then we will call it a day today. After the final statement, there will be a handover to NESG, and then we'll round up the day. Adamu Ibrahim, and maybe I can ask these two questions to you, and maybe Dr. Olusoji, you may want to contribute to these two questions. Adamu Ibrahim says the issues of insecurity in the northern part of Nigeria is getting wearisome. Zamfara State is particular, having same issues regarding banditry activities, and lots of these children are out of school now. Please, what are the modalities that the government should do to reach these children and give them education, especially using technology-based learning? And I think I come to you because you're in government, you in public education data, Mrs. Salami. I keep mixing up, apologies. And then the second question is about private partnerships. So that should be Dr. Soji's question. So Ms. Seita, what has Edo State done? I know Edo State may not have the specific context issues of banditry. Maybe there is, but we don't know. I don't know of that. I think you mentioned your own context was different, but what would you say? What would be your suggestion of what the government should do to reach these children?
Thank you for bringing this question to my table, if I may say. So, speaking generally, the problem of out-of-school children is a national problem. There are always seminars. I've attended so many, organized by UBEC and the Federal Ministry of Education. It's an ongoing conversation that keeps, and it has also attracted a lot of international funding just seeking to solve this problem. Most of the beneficiary states for this out-of-school phenomenon are mainly the states in the north, where the problem is prevalent. Edo currently has the lowest number of out-of-school children according to available data. So in answer to his question, a lot of discussion is being had. Definitely my advice, and I do say this when I meet with other SUBEB chairs or at the Federal Ministry of Education, any of those meetings that I am present, to say that this is a problem that must be tackled a bit differently than how we've been trying to tackle it as a country in the past, because we've invested so much money in it so far. There's a lot of international funding to it, but the problem still persists in the states where where these monies have gone. So clearly the approach needs to be different. And to say that to go the way of technology is the way, definitely, I would definitely recommend that. But for us in Edo, why the problem is not a very big problem that we have. We do have issues sometimes, especially in Edo North, when we have issues of flooding, when for a period of maybe weeks, children cannot access their schools. And we do have some times when there are periods of flooding where, conflicts, where children may be absent of, they may have, even today, I got an education secretary ask me, I need permission to shut down 2 schools for this reason, there's fight. So it does happen, and we do try to address it in a way that is relevant to the area where the problem persists. For example, when His Excellency declared that there would only be 3 days that the children would physically come to school, there were some communities that were internal. And they said, we can go to school every day because we just walk to our communities. And here we do not have access to internet, or the parents here do not have smartphones, and we let those children stay in school 5 days a week. What we are constantly doing is looking at what the data tells us about our enrollment, our attendance, our transitioning rate, and our retention rates, and trying to see how these data or how these numbers can be improved upon. Looking at the data from last term, for example, the data showed us that we're significantly overperforming at teacher attendance, teacher delivery of lessons, head teacher marking overview of the way they manage their teachers in their school and things like that. But we also saw that the data showed us that we needed to be careful about our children attendance in some particular regions. And so the focus for us in this term was to say what exactly is happening. So we have a social mobilization arm. The data then led us to actually decide that the focus for this term would be about engaging the SBMC, the school-based management committees, which is like PTAs in the public sector, because the schools are owned and managed by the community. So we are speaking to them more and saying, why aren't your children coming to school as they should? You shouldn't take the children out because it's planting season. You shouldn't let them stop school because it's harvesting season. So that is how data helps us zero in on what exactly we should be focusing in at the time. So that's what I would say about how we try to manage the situation of enrollment and, of course, retention, transition, and all of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was profound. Thank you for bringing it to your context and, zooming out to what's possible and what you have also been offering as a solution in solving some of these contextual problems. I think I would take as a final Q&A question. And I think Dr. Olusoji will address this. I think you're in a good position too, because you did talk about critical financing. And so this question is from Musa Megari. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Says, how can private partnership, how will private partnership continue to partner with state government to support or to intervene on the educational learning structures? I think it's still about, well, I don't know, let me know, I say it's infrastructure, but support on intervening on educational learning structures of school children living in rural communities in Nigeria. I don't know if Musa Megari is still here, but I think this question is actually directed at finding out what sort of support in private sector or private partnership can help to support children in rural communities in Nigeria. I think good question for you.
Yes, actually, a very good question. And the way to answer it is when you think about the private sector and the business orientation, there's always opportunity for partnership. If you think of the structure of the economy, you see that the government is not the biggest spender. It may be the biggest enabler, but the biggest spender is really the private sector. The private sector actually has that machinery of spending, if you like, and the ability to direct that into things that will eventually return investment, either soft investments, or direct returns back to the private sector eventually, are the opportunities for partnership. So if you think about education today and the kind of reform intervention that we're supporting, in the 4 states that we have at the moment, it will easily tick any of the SDG boxes. SDG 4, quality education, SDG 5, gender equality, all the way to SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. It even ticks boxes around climate change and sustainable cities, and clean water and sanitation. Why? The reason is because a school is actually a melting pot of activities. It's not only learning that can go on in the school. There's so much that you can do because you have captive audience. The children are in school at a particular time, incentivized to come to school. You can vaccinate them, right? You can ensure that they have access to, the proper nutritional diet. You can use them as a sample survey to actually understand the dissemination of other government, interventions, mosquito nets, right? You can actually ask the children if those mosquito nets are in their houses, and immediately you are getting data right from the field, right? So the partnership there is such that if any business at all just takes, one SDG and says, look, this is what I'm focusing on from my CSR perspective, and let me look within my state and how I can connect that to education, you suddenly have an opportunity for partnership. And I can tell you that any state government right now, right, is open to receive any form of partnership that is backed by significant funding, right, to speak to them. They will at least hear you out first, and then to see whether it's aligned to their developmental goals or not. So there's always opportunity for partnership, and I think this is the way to go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There's a measure of buzzwords happening to me here. Someone is saying, I am not asking the right questions to Edo Superb chairwoman. So apologies if I didn't get to that. Apologies. There are so many questions, so I tried to put all of them together. I know that this question, and it's unfortunate that there's an anonymous attendee, so I'm unable to put a name or face to it. And so, no, I didn't try to bypass your questions. I tried to put them into a summary of infrastructure deficits, which is what you asked for. And I think she addressed those questions. She addressed questions of how in the investments, the accountability for the investments, and asked for Edo people to be patient with them. So apologies if I didn't quite get to that. And no, I am not being biased at all. I summarize your questions. So one just final thoughts from all of our panelists. And panelists, please, I would love that when we are done with the final thoughts, just 1 minute where you have to give your final thoughts, and maybe I'll find a way to get you to keep it to 1 minute. We would like you to have your videos on, because at the end of it, we would be taking some pictures. So please keep your videos on for this final bit of comments. So one final thought from you all, from every one of you. Thank you so much for the time that you spent. I often like to ask it like this: if you had a magic wand and you were the person with the exclusive power to help Nigeria refocus education for workforce readiness, what would that be? And maybe I don't take turns, I just, open it up for whoever is ready, and then if we get to complete everyone, then I'll end my time here.
Okay, do you want me to go first?
Amazing.
Okay, if I had a magic wand to refocus on education in Nigeria, I think that, I think someone once said that it is easier to build strong children than to fix broken adults. I'm not sure if it was Douglas or so. And fundamental to, if I think about my journey in the Nigerian education system, it was when I found my identity, or when I found the core of my essence, which education and sometimes parenting. My father wanted me to be a medical doctor or nothing, So I would say that I would ensure, and I look forward to lighthouses like career centers, a strengthened school to work transition system that identifies every individual for who they are and what they carry, the potential every human is endowed. It's just to then help them refine that. And the education system is meant to wake that up and transition people so that they can be the best of what they have and what they carry. So if I had that magic wand, I would strengthen the education system, curriculum side, pedagogy side, but I'd also strengthen the enablers that allow people to transition efficiently from school to work. Or school to life, as the case may be.
Just on the back of what Dr. Tong has said, hi, Dr. Tong. I would like to say that as somebody in the education space, if I had a magic wand, I would say start with basic education. Children need to be able to read, they need to be able to write, irrespective of what career path or life path that they choose. They need to be able to, and I would also say that basic education is the area that has a lot of money already assigned to it. I would say that the political leaders need to decide that these monies would be used efficiently in the areas that matter. I would say that we would try to emphasize the use of technology more than brick and mortar, or make the use of these assigned resources for states to be according to the needs of the state. I would also say that the money assigned to basic education to a one-size-fits-all. If you do well, then get more. And then that would probably challenge our leaders to do even better with the resources that are assigned to them. That's what I would say with my magic wand.
Yeah, maybe I should make a comment here. Yeah, I think one thing that is lacking in our system as a country is not about the structure, it's not about the system per se, and it's not really about the curriculum, but it's about our commitment to the implementation of whatever policies that are there and whatever curriculum that we have as a country. So if we as stakeholders, if the states, particularly because they are the point of implementation, can commit to the implementation of the curriculum, obviously the education system and sector will turn around for good and for the good of the nation. Over.
Thank you. Well, if I had a magic wand, I probably will add it to the other magic wands of the other panelists to make it even more powerful, and then use the combined force of that magic to endorse, the basic education reforms that we find in the likes of Edo, Kwara, Lagos, and Bayelsa today, as an adaptable program or adoptable program across all states in Nigeria. This is a localized, intervention that is working and is showing results and is worthy of emulation across all states.
What an amazing group of panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you. I had a wonderful time learning. And today was really about solutions. I mean, we are fond of talking about problems in Nigeria. I wasn't going to do that today. I was going to look at what the solutions have been, and I'm happy that we got to a certain degree to deal with that. So thank you so much. My time is up. Handing back over to Team NESG. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda. I'm sure that was an amazing conversation. Like you've been doing, I'll just follow your lead. So let's give Rhoda a virtual applause just to appreciate her and the phenomenal work that she has done moderating today's conversation. I would like to appreciate everyone who has stayed to the end of this conversation. I'd also like to especially thank our panelists who shared really insightful and practical steps on how we can actually refocus education for workforce readiness. I'd like to thank Dr. Chima, who is representing the Executive Secretary of the NERDC, I would also like to thank Dr. Akin Olusoji. I would like to thank Mrs. Eyitayo, Mrs. Dayton, and our moderator, Mrs. Rhoda. Thank you for coming on our conversation today. And for those that joined earlier, you heard Mrs. Dayton reference a conference that was held some years ago. That conference today is what gave birth to what is known as the Triple Helix Commission, which is an arm of the NESG that is focused on supporting the NUC in partnership with private sector practitioners. And what this goes to show is that we are not just a talk shop, right? Many times these conversations are held and it just ends at conversations. But at the NESG, we go a step further to implement some of the proceedings that come out of this conversation. And this is just one of the conversations that we are having leading up to the 29th National Economic Summit being organized by the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And I would just like to encourage you, if you are yet to register, you still have time to register. The summit will be taking place October the 23rd and the 24th. So you can register and be a part of the conversation. I'd also like to invite you to join us. Obviously, we'll be continuing this conversation with our panelists and their different organizations as the Education Policy Commission, right? And would also want you to be a part of this process. You can send an email to me, godwin.henry@nesgroup.org, or you can send to cju.olanubi@nesgroup.org or any email that the Secretariat would provide in the chat. I would like to keep this engagement going with you, but you know, when you are having a conversation like this, you are pressed for time. So thank you once again for joining, and I wish you a great weekend ahead.
Thank you. Bye-bye.